All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Sarah Crow, and recognize a lot of people on this call because I graduated about 2 months ago. And honestly, I feel kind of silly giving advice uh, along 7 weeks into my job so far. But excited to be here. I'm at Blackstone up in New York doing asset management for their real estate group. Um, and I'm really excited about it. I'm loving the job so far. We had 5 weeks of training, and it's my third week on the desk, and I'm working on Canadian industrial asset management. Um, I didn't intern at Blackstone before like my junior summer, I interned at Eastdale Secured, which is a real estate investment bank up in New York. In the summer before, I was at Greystar, in their London office. So I kind of have always been really excited about real estate, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. At UNC, I ran the real estate club, UREC, and was on the real estate private equity fund, which is that student run fund that's a mix of MBAs and a few undergrads. And those are both awesome opportunities and kind of helped me get where I am today.
All right, B. So where are you? How'd you get there?
Hey everyone, Bea Huffines, nice to meet you all. I graduated from Chapel Hill in 2020, did Honors Carolina, did Keenan Flagler. When I graduated, I started a private equity job right out of undergrad at a large firm called Partners Group based out in Denver. I was there for about 3 years in Denver, then moved to their New York office, mostly on their healthcare private equity team. And then a little over a year ago, transitioned to a new firm called Invidia Capital. It's a brand new private equity fund we launched about a year and a half ago. 10 total employees, still doing healthcare private equity, but in a very different setting. So excited to chat with you all and happy to answer any questions that are helpful.
All right, Will.
Everyone, and nice to meet all you all. I'm Will. I graduated in 2023 from Chapel Hill, Honors Carolina as well. Spent my last 2 years at a firm called Steep Rock Capital. Office is in Connecticut. I live in New York City. And then that job was doing real estate debt investments across multifamily, industrial, a little bit of office and retail as well. And then I've just recently, on my third week now, at a new job at a firm called Lendlease. It's an Australian-based firm, 50 billion assets under management, and they've historically developed buildings all over, Asia, Australia, Europe, Americas, but working on debt and equity investments here. But yeah, happy to answer any questions and be helpful and be a resource for you all.
Cool. All right. So everybody was really nice to send in a bunch of questions, and I've kind of combined a lot of them with themes. What I'm going to start with is I had several questions basically for freshmen. Along the lines of, as a freshman that is interested in a career in finance, what should I be doing my freshman year? And then a couple more that kept going with freshman summer internships. And I know my answer, but y'all are a lot smarter about that than me. So I'm gonna let B start. Basically freshman, and it could be you should be playing tennis and enjoying life, whatever the answer is. But as a freshman interested in the world of finance, thinking about an internship this summer, what would you tell freshmen?
Great question. I think it's great you're already thinking about it. Unfortunately, the recruiting does keep getting earlier, so it's great that you're ahead of the game and that it's on your mind. I think, joining things like this is a great start. The Carolina Network is wonderful, and just reaching out to folks and having conversations about what their career in finance is like, what does their day-to-day look like. Small things like that can just be super helpful to start to narrow down what area of finance you might be interested. And just having those conversations, making connections with those people, I think is a good use of time in your freshman year. Other than that, on the internship front, I think you have a lot of flexibility and you should kind of have fun with it your freshman year. I worked for a vegan food delivery startup in New York City just because I thought it was interesting. It was a ton of fun. It was not directly related to investment banking, but I loved it. So, I would do something maybe adjacent to the finance world, but that you really think you'll enjoy too. From that job, I kind of learned that I wanted to do something maybe not as early stage as what that company was doing. So, you know, even if it's just for fun, you can get something out of it. So that would be my high level advice.
All right, Sarah, what should the freshmen to prepare and thinking about freshman internships? What words of wisdom you got?
Let's see. I think that in terms of it is hard for freshmen to get involved, particularly on the internship front. Because like recruiting, I mean, you obviously just don't know anything when you're about business when you're not in the business school yet, and the business school happens senior sophomore spring. I do think that getting involved in clubs as early as possible is going to be really important. Because like if you know that you're already excited about finance or real estate or whatever, why not start? And something that I think like allowed me to be president of the real estate club when I was a sophomore was that when I was a freshman, I was one of the only few freshmen in a room actually trying to raise my hand, ask smart questions, volunteer to help out wherever I could. Like the earlier you get started, the more fulfilling your college experience will be. And committing to something, if you know that you're already passionate about it, I think like why not start and why not get involved and hit the ground running. On the internship front, oh, actually, another thing at college, I think that finding an older friend, maybe somebody 2 grades above you, 1 grade above you, that can be super candid with you about recruiting and tell you when release dates are getting dropped and how to approach networking, all that stuff in like a very candid way, I think is good. And then on the internship front, just do something. Like I think that it's you're probably not going to find an investment banking job as a freshman. That's unrealistic, and you probably don't want it because you don't like know about finance yet. But I think that the more you can take risks, explore with discomfort, maybe it's living in a new city or like doing something that creates relationships that might help you get a sophomore internship. All of those kinds of things are ultimately anything that creates a better story when you're talking about your resume than I lived at home and traveled or something like that.
All right, Will.
Yeah, I think just going off what B and Sarah said, I think you just want to have something there for future internships and job applications to have on your resume. I think also, I think B mentioned there's such a good network of UNC alumni in finance, and we're all three of us are in New York, but I know within Charlotte, DC, Atlanta, all of the other cities across the East Coast and even the US, there's a ton of Carolina alumni. So reach out to people, cold email, reach out on LinkedIn, whatever it is. It's at the end of the day, it is sort of a numbers game of just reaching out to as many people and talking to as many people as possible. And that's how you get to hear about their experiences, but also figure out what you want to do, what worked for them, what didn't work for them. So that to me was the most helpful for me. And then, I was a waiter my sophomore summer. My freshman summer was COVID, so there was not really many job opportunities there. But yeah, no, just something on your resume that just shows people that you want to do something, you were thinking about jobs, and you're proactively thinking about it.
So, and everybody, y'all all said kind of the same thing. I've heard this from so many older people that are on Wall Street, whatever. And I ask them, because I get asked all the time, freshman summers, what should they be doing? And it's interesting how many of them say the same thing. Just do something. London School of Economics, summer school, teach tennis at camp. I get it that some of you are worried about applying to Keenan Flagler as a sophomore and you're trying to, kind of beef up that. But but I've heard it over and over again that freshman summer, yeah, do something you enjoy because the summers start to get away from you quickly. And then all of a sudden you're an adult, and adults being an adult sucks. So, enjoy your summers if you can, but do something. Cause you could work at Seafair Camp and we could talk about leadership, organization, mentoring kids. There's stuff you can use there. So I just want to add that. All right. So another question, it's along the lines of y'all are out of school now. You've been to work a little bit, some of you a couple months, some of you a couple years. When you got to your job, was there something that you're like, oh crap, I was not really prepared for that. I wish I would have studied this. I wish I would have experienced it. Something when you got in the real world that college didn't really tell you that you wish you would have known. So I'll finally let you start, Will, for a change.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think for me, the biggest adjustment, I mean, there was within Keenan Flagler, there's a bunch of finance courses, obviously, and Excel aspects to those courses, but I would just try and maximize your Excel practice while you're still in college. And whether that's, within your classes, whether that's an online, if you're interested in real estate, a real estate, Excel course, whatever it is, um, just maximizing that experience, I think would probably be the most helpful. That's the main thing that comes to mind in terms of, the adjustment for starting a job. But yeah, I think that's all I got, Michael.
Cool. All right. B, what did you kind of get like, oh crap, when I got to work?
Um, I guess my first point would be I had to learn quite a bit, but that was okay. I think in your first job, at least in my experience, you're expected to not know a lot and the learning curve is steep and you kind of just have to roll with it and learn on the job. In terms of what I maybe wish I had spent more time focusing on before I started, the technical skills will come and you'll get that training. I think I spent so much time like prepping for the private equity interviews and doing the technical stuff they tell you about. I feel like I missed a little bit a a broader view of like what is the finance ecosystem and how do all the pieces fit together? Like I wish I had spent more time on that. Like I felt like I got into my private equity job and I was doing a good job of my day-to-day tasks, but it took me longer than I think it should have to just have a broad perspective of like, it sounds silly, but where is the money coming from? How do the investment banks fit into it? What do the consulting firms do? Just like a simple understanding of where your job fits into the broader ecosystem is something I underestimated the importance of and just took me a long time to sort of wrap my head around. And I feel like it's something you can spend time on before, so you're better positioned once you get into the job.
That's a really good answer. All right, Sarah, when I know you haven't been there long. Anything jump to mind like, oops, I wish I'd have done that?
I will say echoing Will's point about getting Excel, that's something that like a skill that you can totally come in and be firing on. And UNC has a class taught by Travis Day, forget the class code, but best class I've taken, like it'll make you stand out significantly. And it's something that you can do today. On jobs, I think that something that's kind of a transition point for me right now is being expected to have an opinion on what we're talking about, because I feel like I don't even know what I'm talking about. And then it's kind of obvious that you're supposed to have like technically correct outputs and you're able to do analysis and stuff. But then it's kind of getting to like the next level, the next order of thinking of being able to use judgment and have an intuition about what you're thinking and offer suggestions or solutions. And um, definitely don't think I'm a master of that yet, but it's a different skill set than what's taught in in a Keenan Flagler lecture hall classroom. So that's one. I will say, plugging the real estate fund, the more practice I got in undergrad, being able to have an opinion on deals there has definitely helped me against my peers that only sat in like finance classes. So y'all should definitely get involved in the real estate fund. There's also a private equity fund, which does the same thing. The other thing is just like the EQ of being able to prioritize work when you get a bunch of different assignments from a bunch of different people. Like being an effective communicator, being responsive, knowing how to like figure out information yourself, and being resourceful is important when there's not a textbook.
So I'm gonna add one addition. It has come up multiple times, be really good at Excel. Well, if everybody well, I'm hoping everybody on this call has a LinkedIn profile. If you go to the top right on the LinkedIn page, there's a couple of different little squares, and that's LinkedIn Learning. So you click on LinkedIn Learning while you're a student, it's free. And you can type in there Excel, and there's 20 different Excel classes, from basics that is 30 minutes long to a 15-hour course. So you can page through there and find, Excel for real estate, Excel for this, Excel for that. So LinkedIn Learning, you all get it for free. And that's a way where you don't have to wait for a class, and you could do it on your own to get better at Excel. And again, they've got 20, whatever, they got a million different options. So you can sit there and see, okay, I'm interested in this sector, maybe Excel for that. So that's something you could do. All right. Next question, and this goes towards work or your internships in the past. Big name brand companies versus smaller shops. Kind of, if you had any experiences, the pros and cons of working, a smaller firm and being more hands-on, or a bigger firm and more, departments to work for. So I'll start, B, with you. If you got any thoughts on.
Yeah, I've done both. So it's a great question. They're very different. I started at a big name brand fund. Partners Group is, 1,500 employees globally. Very structured analyst program. There was, 15 or 20 of us in a couple different offices, month-long training program, and then you go through year-long rotations on different groups throughout the firm. I think that was a really, really great place to start my private equity career. The training that you get in that type of situation is just really good. There's a ton of people to learn from. You're in the office with, hundreds of people every day that you can ask questions to. You've got a group of peers that are going through it with you. So that kind of formal big company training, I was super grateful for at the start. I think the reason I left after 4 years was, all the downsides you would expect with a big firm. I kind of felt like a cog in the machine. It was a lot of bureaucracy. The processes were very, very regimented. So I wanted something a bit more entrepreneurial, where I had, a little bit more say in the way things went, and a little bit more responsibility. So that's why I went to a 10-person firm that was just starting out, and it's been exactly that, right? It's really exciting to be on the ground level, setting up the fund from the start. Super great. You have exposure to the partners every single day. That part is really, really cool. So I think that progression from a big to a small firm, I would definitely recommend. There's downsides too, right? Like at a small firm, we don't have the same resources, even small things like access to PitchBook and Cap IQ, like things that you have at Carolina. I don't have that anymore because we just are tiny and we can't afford it yet. So I think when you're just starting out, having those things to back you up and support your learning are great. And then it's been super exciting to see the other side of it and be at a tiny place building it from the start.
Will, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, definitely great points made by B. I sort of did the opposite. I started off at a small firm, seven person investment team, and was thrown straight into transactions. So, as we sort of talked about earlier, there's definitely, not an expectation when you start that everyone expects you to know everything. Um, that being said, there was no sort of formal training process for me. So I was thrown straight into a deal with an associate and one of our partners, and just sort of learning on the go, which has its positives and negatives. But I think at the end of the day, for me, getting that deal exposure at a small firm early on, being on leading closing calls, for a deal closing 3 months into 3 months after graduation from UNC was a pretty interesting experience, but one that I was really valuable, for me. So I think that there's positives and negatives to both. Not to say that one is necessarily better than the other, but for me, starting off at a small firm, I just got a lot of good deal exposure. Looked at, saw 15 transactions in 2 years, and yeah, got to get a lot of good experience. So again, there's not really one that I would say is necessarily better than the other, but just whatever you think your preferences are and which sounds more appealing to you.
And Sarah? I know I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I have only been at the big firms so far. But kind of agree with everything that Will and B said. I think that most, like, two thoughts as first, having a name brand on your resume is good. It gives you training, it gives you structure, it gives you prestige. Don't do something you're not passionate about just because it has a name brand. You'll be miserable and you'll be bad at it. And like, I think that when you look at the types of, like, the kids that go into investment banking just for that prestige and don't have like intrinsic motivation to do it, it's a miserable 2 years. Or the people who like are at Blackstone real estate because they wanted to work for Blackstone and don't care about real estate. Like, that's, you're here a lot of the day. So definitely do something that is interesting to you. And then the other thing is, more than anything, just finding people who you think will be good mentors. That's at a small brand or a big brand, but like, that's really going to make your experience more than the company, like leadership or something that's like really abstract, is like the direct people you're around.
All right, so I'll let you keep talking. A lot of people came up, basic question, where do I find my internships? So looking back at your couple summer internships and your job, where'd you find them?
I think that I could have done such a better job of recruiting in a more structured, which would have been a less stressful way to do it. Like, my advice to you guys, especially like sophomores who, it's absurd, but are going to be applying to your junior internship starting in the winter and going to the spring, is like, treat it like a 3 credit hour class that has, like, just in the way that you probably had a college counselor to apply to colleges and you were serious about it. Like, the more you can kind of get out ahead of the recruiting process, the less crazy and stressful it'll be. But I think that, like, a lot of the stress for me was that, like, was caught in the uncertainty of like, am I ahead or am I behind or am I missing things? And so what I would recommend is having a big Excel spreadsheet of things you're interested in, of companies you're interested in, knowing the handshake link or whatever, having a cover letter that you can apply to different firms by changing up your interests, having 2 people on each company that you've talked to in some sort of way, and like just being really structured and regimented about it, taking time like as you would a class a couple times a week and just approaching it. I think it'll be less stressful then.
All right, Will, so how did your couple internships and your job, how'd you find them? Where'd you find them?
Yeah, I think it sort of circles back to a point that we were talking about earlier of just maximizing your network connections, reaching out to people. Sort of going off what Sarah said, I did a spreadsheet my junior/senior year just with a list of people that I had talked to, a note section on like, what their role is, where they work, what we talked about. And then just a list of, people that I still wanted to talk to. And I added to that list constantly. But you know, the more you have these conversations with people and just get to hear about what they're doing, the more, like I said, you'll figure out what you want to do. And you never know. I mean, I always like to end these conversations with, is there anyone else you think I should talk to? Which I think is a question you should be asking on every single networking call, just so you can continue that conversation. Let that maybe, you talk to X person, they introduce you to Y person isn't hiring, but they introduce you to Z person, and so on and so forth. And it will eventually come into someone that is looking for the job that you're looking for. And that's how I got both of my jobs, just talking to people and talking to people and talking to people, and came across, right time, right place. So it's a lot about, you can apply to these jobs on LinkedIn or Handshake and whatnot, but at the end of the day, you need to be reaching out to people as well, and that's the most important thing.
B?
Agree with everything. Good statistic for you, Michael. I actually found every single one of my internships through the Carolina network.
There we go.
So some of it was through like professors like Bernard Bell, who leads the entrepreneurship program, helped me get my sophomore year internship. Grant Cheatinger, who leads the
Oh.
finance council, helped me find Partners Group. My boss at Invidia was a Moorhead at Chapel Hill. And all these conversations, to Will's point, like I'm not calling asking for a job, but I just called Grant up, for example, and I was like, these are the things I'm thinking about for my career. Do you have any advice? He mentioned Partners Group as a cool program, and that's how I got connected to it. So it's not necessarily like a direct ask, but just these career chats turn into opportunities organically.
Yeah, so the career coach in me, I will follow up exactly what B was talking about. When you're reaching out to these people, the reach out is, hey, I see that you're at so and so company, you're doing this. I'm really interested in that career. I would love to learn more. And so that's the reach out. And then you have this great conversation. And Will, there's two things I tell everybody. Basically, you call them informational interviews, where you're reaching out to these people that are doing what you want to do, where you want to do it. So Will said one of them that I tell every student is, who else do you know? Who else should I be talking to? Don't say, do you know anybody? Because that gives them a yes, no answer. Say, who else should I be talking to? And then the thing I always tell on these calls is, last question you ask them, if you were in my position, what would you do next? And it's always a different answer, but they give you steps. So that's the career coach in me, reiterate, because I've met with all our panelists and we've worked on things, but the reach out and somebody helped them. So it's not as scary as you think it is to reach out to people. People love helping Carolina people. They love your story, things like that. So don't be so like, oh man, I'm really uncomfortable reaching out to people, because they were where you were at one time. And I guarantee you somebody else helped them also. So there's my career coach spiel right there. All right. So in this day and time, this comes up. AI. Do you think your career path how is it going to help it? How is it going to hurt it? in AI? Would it change the way you're looking to go somewhere? Would it make you think I need to do something different? And none of us know the answers, to be honest. But do you have any thoughts on that with AI and how it changed the industry? I'll start with you, Will.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a great question and one that everyone's talking about these days. I think that I think that everyone should be using it because it is the future. I'm already using it. I've been using it at my job.
Sure.
Primarily, I mean, the most common way I use it is for especially if I'm writing a longer email, with a lot of summary, bullet points and whatnot. I'll help it, clean up my writing, make this sound better. Where can I, fix this? That's probably the most common place I use it. But I think just in general, we should all be using it. In terms of how it's going to affect my job going forward, I mean, I don't know. I think some people are convinced that it's going to be taking the jobs, especially the lower analyst associate jobs, that are, mostly analytical numbers oriented jobs. But I don't know. I don't know if I have a great answer for that.
None of us do. Sarah, you got any thoughts on it?
Yeah, gosh. I do think the job market will get harder. And I think that especially at like big companies, you are starting to see some automation of underwriting, and it's not great yet, and you still need analysts, but in a couple years, maybe automation of underwriting becomes like pretty good. So I don't think like you should be freaking out about it, but I definitely do think you should be considering which roles are most susceptible to AI. Something I've read a lot about recently is consulting is especially affected by it. Which this is a finance call, but I think that there is a lot of displacement in terms of, an AI can make a SWOT analysis in about 2 minutes that used to take 2 weeks to do. And that's how consultants price their stuff, is based on time and amount of people. So yeah, think about like what everybody's gonna have their own opinion on what industries are most affected. And then I think it's just a better argument than ever for relationships and having a really strong network and making yourself stand out.
Yeah, definitely. The more it's a people business, the more, you're more valuable. B, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's mostly been helpful to me in my job. In terms of like the technical modeling, I think I've tried to use AI for it. Unfortunately, it's so bad. So at least I think our jobs are secure for now from that perspective. Um, Mostly I would say it's impacted the way we think about investing in healthcare companies. Because of the way it might impact different investments. So that's something to, you know, think about, understanding the impacts it's going to have on different industries you might be investing in or looking at working in. But from like a financial analyst perspective, I wouldn't ever worry about that. I mean, maybe I'm biased and think I'm more important, but I don't think that job's going away anytime soon.
The irony is I go to ChatGPT and go, hey, what jobs will ChatGPT be eliminating? I'm asking AI to answer the AI question, but oh well. All right. So I'm going to ask one more question and then I'm going to turn it over the last 10 minutes for things that we haven't hit yet. People can, do the raised hand or whatever, put it in the chat. But my last question somebody asked is probably what's the single most important thing you did at Carolina to help you towards your career? Go ahead, Sarah. You can start.
I would say my biggest piece of advice is the way to get. I didn't do a lot of networking and sending people coffee chat emails to a million different people and stuff like that. The way I approach networking, which I think, I don't know, may have been dumb, but it was a lot more fulfilling, was like building relationships with a smaller number of people through like offering yourself to a shared endeavor. So like you're a student and you're trying to network with somebody you want a job from someday, and that feels like a power dynamic. But like think about the ways that think about what you have to offer, whether that's, I'll talk about from a real estate perspective. UNC has a Wood Center that's a real estate program. Some of the best alumni or some of the best real estate people in the country are alumni of this program. Like when I wanted to talk to somebody, I would offer to pick them up from the airport when I knew the conference was coming in. Or I would try to get involved with an initiative on the Wood Center board, and then I would get to meet board members. And then like the more that you can join something and be a builder, the real estate fund was the perfect example of this, where I was a investor offering to invest in different like real people with real companies deals, and I got to underwrite them and ask them questions. There's no better way to network like than working on something together and showing you're a strong analyst and showing that you have interesting ideas. You're going to create stronger relationships. And then the other thing with mentorship and networking is it feels really transactional when somebody calls me and has like a scripted 15-minute, I'm just talking to you so I can check that box because I want a job at Blackstone. Like, I understand I told you all to do the Excel spreadsheet and do all that, but like the more that you can approach a mentorship relationship with an agenda and showing that you're sincerely interested in the other person on the line and you're intellectually curious rather than just thinking about what can this person get me, would be my advice. So fewer but stronger relationships. You never know who's going to create opportunities for you, but like, I think just like finding a way to be a builder and work with somebody on something, is going to create like much stronger relationships.
B, what's the one thing that helps you that you did that you're like, you know what, that was a good idea?
I think just using the resources Carolina has to offer, and you really have to be kind of active about it. But the beauty of being at a place like Carolina is if you're curious about it, there's something you can do to learn about it, and there's a million other people who are curious about it too. Like just fun things too. Like I went on the trek to Silicon Valley with Honors Carolina. I went to Dubai with Keenan Flagler. Like those are crazy cool things you can do at Carolina to learn more about business and what interests you that just don't exist in the real world. So take advantage of them.
Cool. Will, what's the one thing that you look back and go, that was useful?
Yeah, I think Sarah and Bea both made great points. Only other thing I would add was just sort of on top of those points is just pushing your boundaries as much as possible. And, it's very cliche, but get comfortable being uncomfortable. I think for me I did an Honors Carolina program, study abroad in London my junior year of spring. And so that was like I took 3 or 4 different courses at the Winston House in London. And those were Carolina courses. You got an actual grade, went to your transcript, and you got the EE credit or whatever it is you need. That like one random credit you need. And then while also doing that, had a 20-hour per week internship with Starwood Capital doing asset management there. So that was a great experience. I went there not knowing anybody, made a bunch of friends, made a bunch of connections. Still people I reach out to often to this day. But also just got, great work experience as well, and was a, foundation of my real estate experience. And, so something like that where you're, pushing your comfort zone. I think Carolina has a million opportunities to do that.
Yeah, anybody, I mean, I've seen some names here. Anybody that's taken any of my classes, that my biggest theme is do scary stuff. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's the best thing you can do in college. Try things, don't be scared to fail, don't be scared to reach out. And the other thing, Sarah said something that I put on a sheet, while you're at an internship, is I tell people to raise their hand. They need somebody to go to the airport, pick them up, I'll do it. They need somebody to show up Saturday morning to answer the phones, I'll do it. So when you're doing your internships, be that guy or girl to volunteer. I'll do it. I'll go over and above. You will stand out if you're the person always raising your hand. All right. So that's the questions I had written down. A couple in chat, I think have popped up. Anyone? No, AI is trying to listen in on us. Anybody, you could just speak up. Any questions where you want to elaborate on an answer or something we didn't cover? We got, 5 minutes before some of y'all need to hustle over to the IBBC thing. What questions? These
I
people,
have a question.
yep, go ahead.
So all of you guys are in New York. So is it normal to relocate from North Carolina to another state for a firm? Was that your personal decision or was that just how it ended up happening?
Go ahead, B. You can
Yeah.
answer that first.
I actually started my career in Denver. My first firm was headquartered there. I had never been to Denver before. Went for the interview for the first time and decided I liked it. There's obviously a lot of finance in New York. There's also a lot in Charlotte if you want to stay in North Carolina. I grew up in New York, so it was a personal decision for me to always want to come back here. I would say definitely prioritize location. Personal opinion, I think sometimes people will take a job just because it's a good job and underweight location. It was a fun experience being in Denver, but I was a lot happier when I got back to New York. So just a personal anecdote that location matters and you should live where you want to live.
Will, you got any thoughts about, I know your crowd's from up there.
Yeah, I think there's going off of that, I think there's just such a good network of people in finance in New York and especially Carolina grads. I think it's also comes down to where you want to be. And if you're from North Carolina, say your family's from Charlotte or you live near Charlotte, there's plenty of finance jobs in Charlotte as well. So obviously it's all about what you want to do and where you're comfortable, but I think you also should take into account what's best for what specifically, where's that firm located, and is it a bigger office or is it a smaller office? A couple of factors play into it, but New York is definitely a great place to be if you want to be in finance.
Sarah, any thoughts on that?
I think the highest concentration of great finance jobs and smart finance people are in New York. And I would really encourage you guys to take a few years after college to move to a new city and try something new. You can always move home.
Be uncomfortable. All right. The other thing I would add and this is we've gotten away from it the last couple of years. Be careful about working remote jobs. So, hey, I got a job in Austin, Texas, and it's a remote job, and you sit in your apartment for 8 hours in front of a computer and you don't know what you're doing. So be careful. Remote's fine. You're married, you got kids, whatever, but right out of college, internships, you want to be in the pit. You want to go with people out for a drink or bite to eat on a Tuesday. That's how you get to know people. So my 2 cents would be leery of remote work. Now, y'all may think of something differently, but that'd be my 2 cents. What other questions? They were so thorough and brilliant that they answered all of y'all's questions. Nobody has any more.
I have a question.
There you go.
If you all could choose one word to describe the recruiting process that you underwent, what would it be and why?
Go ahead, Will.
I'm gonna it's not exactly one word, but I'm gonna call it a full-time job. Because it's definitely worth it. And I think the hardest job to get is your first job, in my opinion. But it is a full-time job, getting a full-time job, you know, in terms of networking, in terms of applications, in terms of writing cover letters and, you know, prepping yourself for interviews and studying technicals and all the stuff that goes into the interview process, especially for entry finance roles. It's a full-time job. So I guess that's what I would say.
Sarah, the recruiting process, what, looking back, was it nightmarish? Was it, you know, what, a little bit of everything? What do you think?
From between relationships and curiosity.
I got you. B?
I'll go with unexpected because I was interviewing mostly for consulting firms. Interviewed for one private equity firm randomly in Denver where I'd never been, and it ended up being the perfect job. So take the interviews. You never know what's gonna feel like a fit once you're there.
That's a great point. So, you know, listen to everybody. You never, you know, you may find something that you didn't even know you liked. Same thing with taking a class or two. All right. Last question. Somebody give me a good last question. No more questions. All right, I'm gonna turn everybody loose so they can, if some people are going over to the whatever the workshop is, that's good. But I really, Will and B and Sarah, I really appreciate y'all being here. You know, y'all, your information, your experience, your background, your stories are so helpful to our students, and it's you just have no idea how much I appreciate it. So thank y'all.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.